Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I hope everyone had an amazing Christmas. For us, it was the first one without Ange. And while we didn't talk too much about her, the absence of Ange's presence was noticed every minute. She lived for this time of year. She loved giving gifts. And I was able to find one last gift for Keaton from her. And I think I've mentioned this before, that when Ange was dying, people would come over to the house, and when they were leaving, one by one, Ange would tell them how much they meant to her, and she seemed to have this message of goodbye that was filled with all this love. It was really, really special, and Keaton and I didn't get that, and I think about that all the time, that we just had to watch her die, but we didn't get a goodbye from her because she wasn't able to do that. So back to this last gift, I uncovered a journal about a month ago, and there was a question in this journal, and it was like, who do you talk to right before you die, and what do you say to them? And Ange wrote a heartfelt paragraph to Keaton in May of 2020, and on Christmas Eve, I gave that to Keaton, and I thought that was a pretty special thing. I think we both had some tears flowing, and while she loved me, she really, really loved Keaton and our dog. So I don't know, it just sucks so bad for him, for her, for us, for everything that she's gone. But you can imagine Christmas is hard for us, and this week's going to be harder for me. I have my birthday and our anniversary. This would have been our 17-year anniversary. So I've got to deal with that shit. And then on top of that, I'm going to be totally stressed out because I need to get a podcast done. And while I've had 3 people scheduled for this week coming up, one's already missed it, and I'm stressed about the other 2. While they'll probably be fine, you never know what's going to happen. Worst case scenario for me in this podcast is you get the second to last Best of Inappropriate Questions episode to kick off the year. But if everything works out, it's going to be a regular show, and this week is no regular show. To end 2025 and my 9th season, I've got a guy who's been to the summit of Mount Everest 4 times. But Sid Pattison is not a summit chaser. He's an all-time guy. He's the owner of North Cascade Heli Ski in about 30 days. And he's just one of those dudes that has one of those magnetic personalities that everybody wants to be around, and everybody feels like they know Sid, even if they've only met him a couple of times. He's got the best personality in the business. And before we chat with Sid, I want to thank you for listening each week. I want you to tell a friend about the show. And shit, if you like this episode with Sid, please share it on your social media feed. It really does help the show grow. But finally, please support my incredible sponsors who've made this show happen year in and year out. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Best Day Brewing, Stanley, Thermic Heated Socks, and Ski Idaho. Now, it's time to chat with Sid Pattison. While I don't know you, I met you for 3 days, and I really feel like I know you.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, but you're one of those guys I feel like that anybody who meets you walks away from that interaction with like, wow, I really connected with that guy, and I really feel like I know him. Do you kind of feel that way, that you kind of are able to connect with a lot of people right off the bat?
Well, I don't know if it's anything specific about me, but I think people like to connect, and I think it's really fun to find connections and make that connections. And, I will say, I don't think, I try for it. I'll say that. I like connecting with people, and I like meeting cool people like you and spending time together and getting to know people. Like, people are interesting.
They are very interesting, and I think you're very interesting. And doing the research through this podcast is like, how did Sid get here and how did Sid get there? And a lot of opportunities throughout your whole life came to you really early or really unexpectedly. And I feel like it's because of your magnetic personality, like the way that you do things and the person that you are has given you shortcuts in life. And it's just something that you're born with. Do you notice that you're different than other people?
Yeah, in a way, like there's this one thing that I've always thought about. So like growing up for high school, I went to like 6 different call them educational institutions. And my parents never moved. I was just bad at school, and so I got kicked out and asked not to leave. So I was perpetually the new kid, Everyone thought they were clever when they came up with the term new kid Sid. So I think early on, like I was constantly having to kind of like ingratiate myself in established groups of people. And I think it gave me an ability to kind of like move through people fairly easily. I guess I've attributed to that a lot of the time.
And I would think, though, that when you do move school to school to school, it doesn't take long for Sid to become one of the popular people in whatever those schools are, because just the magnetic personality you have.
Well, I never felt that way, but that's nice of you to say.
Well, it seems like everywhere in your life and anybody I talk to, everybody has nothing but positive things to say about you. But then they also say that Sid does things a little bit differently. And there's the way that everybody does things. And then there's the Sid way. And I'm going to bring up a few different things about the Sid way to kick this thing off.
Oh, yeah.
It starts out, you live in a 50-foot container home with your partner.
40 foot.
40 foot, my bad, with your partner and 2 daughters. And that sounds interesting. But when you needed more space, while most people would either get another container or they would build or they would do something, how did you solve that problem?
Or it's probably more accurate to say, how am I solving that problem?
Oh, it's still going.
It's still going. We're hoping to move in Christmas. That's like our goal. It was December 1st, but then I had to leave for a few weeks. But yeah, so we bought this house on Facebook Marketplace, which
Okay.
I think it's so cool. I still have the ad. I screenshotted it at the time, and I still have it.
Did you just send them a price, like lowball them up $14,000 and nothing else, and then they said yes, and you're like, shit, I bought a house?
Oh, I wish. This guy, I tried to beat him up on the price. So I bought this thing, and I thought it was expensive at the time. And, so I went and looked at the house, and, he's kind of like, who in their right mind is actually going to do this? And it had been a year that he'd been listing it. And so I contacted him. I go, look at the house. And I'm like, it's very cool. So then I go to his office one day, and I'm like, I'm going to beat you up on the price. And I think those were my words exactly. And he goes, no, the price is the price, but I will make it worth your while. And he came through every step of the way. He's got all this excavation equipment, and anytime I needed something, still to this day, like, he sent a guy up to grade my driveway like a week ago. Yeah. So we moved this house. We had to chop it off of the old basement and then jack it up and move it 18 miles up this sketchball driveway and through 2 different power districts, which you don't think of as a big deal.
How many lines have to come down?
15 ended up having to come down. A bunch got lifted. And
so this is like a 50-person job with cops and all kinds of highway crews moving one house to another place, and it's a huge coordinated effort.
Oh, yeah. It was the amount of logistics of just I didn't know exactly what day we were going to move it because we were hustling, trying to get everything into position. But I had to get all these entities, cops and the power companies and the DOT had to be involved, and everyone wanted to know when it was going to happen. And I'm kind of like, I don't know, just hoping that we could kind of catch lightning in a bottle and it all happened. It didn't work that well. We had one false start where we had 50 people just standing around, and we're like, not going to happen today.
Oh.
And that cost me a chunk of change. But, excuse me if I toot my horn, but to my credit, we're way ahead. It's still way cheaper than any other option out there. And it's awesome.
Okay, so that's the Sid way with the house, and that's a really short way, I think, to tell that story, because you told it to me a little bit before when we were at Snowvana, some trade show that we were at. But then the next thing is you move to North Cascades. I think you're doing some guiding, you're doing some ski guiding as well, but you're kind of at a place in life where you need to figure out what you're going to do to have some kind of normalcy in life, and you decide that everybody's shoes get worn out really quickly, all your friends, and you're like, fuck, I'm just going to become a shoe cobbler. Was that the thinking?
That was pretty much it. In Seattle, there's this world-renowned shoe cobbler named Dave Page, who's just an absolute institution. If anybody's in Seattle and they need anything worked on, or they just find themselves in Fremont and want to pop in and say hi to Dave Page, do it. He's a great guy. He's grumpy, and he can make you sad if you find him at the wrong time. But he is awesome. And I worked for him for 10 years. Because I could just come and go. I'd show up, and then I'd be like, Dave, I'm going to leave for 3 weeks. He'd be like, cool. And I worked for him, and it was awesome. And then I moved out here to the Methow Valley, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I was like, well, I'll start a boot repair shop because I know how to do that. And I did that for a handful of years, really with mixed success, but,
There was a big opportunity, I feel like, there, and this is where the Sid kind of way worked out, where Garmont was going out of business. You heard about it, somehow contacted them, and took all the inventory of everything they had, and that was how you did your business at one point?
Yeah, and I really should have run after this, but really wasn't my passion at the end of the day. But like, yeah, Garmont was going out of business and they were liquidating their whole complex in Burlington. So I reached out to them. They were being purchased by Scott at the time. So they had this interim CEO. And I'm like, hey, what are you going to do about your warranty? You guys used to always do that in this warehouse in Burlington. And he's like, you want to do it? And I said, yep. And so then I flew out to Burlington and I packed up their whole warehouse, like hundreds of ski boots and tools and everything. They just didn't want to deal with it. And I brought it all back here and stoked all my friends out with boots and then would do all their warranty for the United States. And then I had a similar thing with like Sherpa and Black Diamond on the West Coast. So it was like, yeah, setting up these warranty deals with manufacturers, and it was awesome. It was, super fun, kind of, other than just working by myself.
And then the last thing of the Sid hustle that brings mass fruit to whatever you would bring to fruit to is there was a ski shop in Bainbridge that was closing down that somehow you've heard about, and they gave you all of their tuning gear. Is that true?
Yeah, that was so crazy. It was a ski and bike shop on Bainbridge Island, and it sold, and the new owners no longer wanted to do anything with skis, so it was kind of under the obligation of the previous owner to get rid of the whole shop. Just everything, base grinders, edgers, all the hand tools, everything. It was a whole ski shop, and all of a sudden he was up against the wire to get rid of all that stuff, and he just needed it gone. And so somehow I got in contact with him, and I drove over there and I filled up a truck and a trailer and everything full of all this stuff. And then we have some of it here at the Heli Barn for tuning our skis. And then I gave the base grinder to the high school program that builds skis out here. I think the edger as well. Yeah, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, how could I miss this opportunity? And I went and made it happen. And there's really nothing to benefit from that opportunity other than missing the opportunity would be too high of a cost. So I seized on it.
Okay, and now I'm going to bring up the final "this shit only happens to Sid" story. And I told you I was going to put this in the podcast when I met you and when I heard you said this. But
all right,
you went to Everest, and when you went this one trip, you were married with 2 kids. And then you get to Everest, you meet someone at base camp, and is it like love at first sight for you?
Well, it's far more complicated than that. To answer your question, yes, this is all true. And yeah, just this woman that she was working there as well, and we were very professional the whole time.
Yeah, there's nothing like that going on, but you just realized that you had a connection with someone that you hadn't had before in your life, and you're a stand-up guy. It's not like you're going to do anything to jeopardize your marriage or something, but there was a moment in your life where you realized, holy shit, I'm going to have to get on a plane, go back home, and tell my wife this. And it's going to probably be the hardest thing that I have to do. But if I don't do this, I won't be able to live with myself.
That's exactly it. And I remember flying back from that expedition. It was a super good expedition. Everything was so good. And flying back, I just had this sinking feeling, this like, oh no, like what is going on and how do I deal with this? And I was on the flight with a very good friend of mine who we were climbing together that season, and I just totally opened up to him, and he and I, for like the 30 hours of travel back to Seattle, he just kind of was like my shoulder to lean on and tried to figure out, and he's like, give yourself a couple weeks. I remember him saying that, and I was like, yeah, good idea. That's a great idea. And then I get home and I walk in the door and I'm just like, I can't, I have to. And this is, yeah. And so basically came home and lit the house on fire, so to speak,
Yeah, that's got to be the hardest thing that you ever have to do. But if you don't do it, you're going to be like kicking yourself. But at the same time, you're this dude that has a way about himself, that the way you deal with people. I've known you for 3 days, so I can't really say that I know you that well. 6 days. Yeah, that's right. There was 2 trade shows. Is it one of those things where you still have a relationship with your ex-wife and you're still good friends and all of that?
I wish I could say that. It's getting closer and closer to that, but there's just kind of this innate amount of space that has to get interjected. And I guess the best way to say it is there's a varying amount of time that it takes that space to get metabolized through the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have good times, we have tougher times. 100% everything is worked out in the way that it should have in regards to the girls, and they love all of us, and they know that we love each other. Emily, my current partner, she came in under tough circumstances, but she's done such an amazing job of being a force of positivity in those girls' lives in both regards to me and their mother, and has really offered a cushion that has been well needed when, we were metal on metal, if you know what I mean.
In a container. That too. But anyway, it's totally not fair of me to bring that up, but I did tell you I was going to do that when you told the story, and we don't have to harp on that any longer because I don't do that with anybody else, but I know that you're the type of dude that can not only take that, but you can add to the conversation and kind of make it very interesting, which you did. But there's ways that Sid does things, and we've kind of talked about that, but we're not going to talk about all of that. We're going to jump back into your life and times growing up. And you had told me that you should be Jewish. You were like born and should be Jewish, but you weren't Jewish. Then you turned 13 and you're like, where's my bar mitzvah?
What the fuck, man? Yeah, seriously, all these kids are getting like $2,000, and yeah, oh man, so badly. I went to synagogue with my, I grew up in a very Jewish place, and so everyone was Jewish, and I thought it was fun. Synagogue was more fun than church, and my family had no religious affiliation, so I was like, I'll hang out with these guys. And yeah, then everyone turns 13, and I'm like, what? You guys are all having these it's like a fabulous birthday party, and I'm just sitting out here in the cold, unchosen, as I learned, which I didn't know before I was 13, but it's all right.
You're the unchosen kid on Mercer Island, and when I was doing some research and I heard Mercer Island, I was like, holy shit, Sid's rich. I was like, that's so crazy. And I can't just assume that you're rich, so I mean, did you have a house with like a ski lift or anything growing up?
That's the biggest fucking tee-up I've ever heard. We did, but this was some monkey wrench stuff. So my dad, well, it really comes from my grandfather. They're just kind of these engineer types. And while like on paper, having a ski lift in your backyard does sound like real 1%ery, this was like this old 7.5 horsepower merry-go-round engine with a bunch of Model A wheels, and it's still running to this day. It was featured in the TGR film Stoke the Fire.
That's why I was asking about it, but I was also asking about it to establish your richness, and it was very easy to ask you about a house with a tow rope. Now I'm going to tee it up again to establish more richness. How old were you the first time you went heli skiing?
Well, see, all of these, again, I've never considered myself a rich kid, but I was young, and this is a good story to me. I don't know if it will be to your audience, but so I had this great buddy growing up, or not great buddy, he was like an uncle, my parents' good friend, named Dale Caulfield. 70 years old now, but he was a guide here, and he was a really good friend of my dad's. He was a guide here at North Cascade Heli. So at some point when I was 11 years old, they had 2 extra seats, and somehow my dad and I got put in those seats with Fuzzy. And yeah, it was hilarious because, I remember showing up like, oh man, I'm a ripping little 11-year-old skier. I'm going to be fine. And I could see the looks on all these like grown men who'd paid a lot of money to go heli skiing. Like, this kid's going to ruin my day. And I was like, there's no way. And like third run, I lose a ski, and the whole team for like an hour is looking for my ski. And I was like, well, you guys are right. Sorry.
What other hobbies did you have growing up? Did you take piano or guitar lessons? I'm just trying to like see what young Sid is.
So yeah, when I was a kid, the only thing I wanted to be was a professional musician. That's all I wanted. Played music and bands all through high school, and still playing a band here in the Valley. We are awesome, But yeah, so I grew up playing music and I loved it. I wanted nothing more than to go to Cornish College of the Arts and study performance and stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, it just wasn't that good. I had more heart. I was like the Rudy of music. A lot of heart, but really couldn't perform.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start with longtime sponsor Elan Skis. And if you haven't skied on an award-winning ripstick yet, you're missing out on something that ski brands have long said wasn't an option. A lightweight ski that powers through anything and truly rips. It's game-changing. And Elan, while they've been around for 80 years, have been changing the game of modern skiing by doing things like adding side cut to straight skis with the Elan SCX, which changed the whole industry. They're building skis by skiers in a place with ski culture in the Slovenian Alps. And most importantly, they're supporting local shops. When the competition goes and starts selling direct, Elan sticks by their retailers who have been by them since the beginning. Elan is just built differently, and they innovate with a purpose, and that's to make your on-snow experience better, easier, and more fun. It's this approach that brought you the Ripstick and all of their award-winning skis. And when you're in the market for a new pair, visit an Elan retailer, demo a pair of their skis, and you'll know why Elan has built a cult following here in the States. To find out more about all the skis or to find an Elan dealer, head on over to elanskis.com. Next up, it's outdoor research. And if you haven't checked out outdoorresearch.com in the past week or so, then you haven't seen the brand new winter line, which looks incredible. I could spend a lot of this ad telling you all the tech and why outdoor research is better. But know that in the 1980s and the early 90s, Outdoor Research built a reputation on functional quality outdoor gear that pushed the limits of innovative possibilities. And those who were function first were all about OR gear because it was and it still is built better, and Outdoor Research is still pushing those limits of innovation. This year, the outerwear focuses on 3 new collections: the Cloud Chaser for backcountry, and the Powderverse and Hemisphere collections for freeride, as well as some staples in the line like the Snow Crew collection. These outerwear systems are styled for and by athletes like Mark Adma, Troy Podmilsack, Zoe Aitken, snowboarder Neil Provo, and others, and that's why this outerwear collection not only looks so good, but each piece is more functional than ever, and they're all you're going to need in any conditions. To find out more about the new collection, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And now is the time to think snow. And skiers, snowboarders, weekend warriors, tubers, sledders, snowbikers, snowmobilers, snowshoers, sled doggers, shovel racers, snow angel makers, ice skaters, snowball fighters, igloo builders, you get it. The doers of winter are starting to get ready to shred. And post-shred, it's all about après. And this year, do après the right way. Forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, forget about not taking more runs on the mountain, forget about getting in trouble on the way home, because with a beer from Best Day Brewing, you don't have to worry about any negative consequences. Just incredible flavor. Blind taste tests prove that you won't be able to taste the difference between a Best Day and your favorite beer with alcohol. The only difference you'll notice is how good you'll feel in the morning, and you're going to remember what you did last night, which is almost refreshing as a Best Day itself. To celebrate your best day yet, next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of Best Day. Or you can always buy it on your Alaska Airlines flight, Amazon.com, or head on over to bestdaybrewing.com to get the full assortment of Best Days. Those are my sponsors. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast. While you were in high school, you ended up taking a course at the Northwest Mountain School, and that was game-changing for you too, because it was like music was one thing, and then the other thing was just being in the mountains.
Yeah, totally. When I was young, I went to a summer camp and they had some rock climbing there, and I was like, that's really neat. And then, my parents really wanted to find some sort of passion that wasn't getting stoned with my friends and playing music. Turns out, they didn't know this at the time, but mountain guiding is pretty much the same thing, in the off hours. But yeah, so there's this company called the Northwest Mountain School that back in those days was like a Knowles Outward Bound type program, but now is a legit guiding service. And so I did this climb of Glacier Peak with those guys and got to know the owner. His name's John Race. And, I really kind of got hooked on it, and then I became their intern when I was like 17. Must have been the most worthless intern that's ever interned for an internship. But yeah, I worked with him, and that was really kind of like what set me on the trajectory of my life. It was at that point I was kind of, could be considered a wayward youth.
You said you weren't doing that well in school, and you had gone to 6 different schools. You were playing a lot of music, and you had the mountains that were going to point you in the right direction and music that would just point you in a direction.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that I have I don't have the personality type that could really handle a musician's lifestyle, in the sense that, there's just way too much partying, and I love that stuff.
You could do that for sure, man. Come on.
Yeah, that's not a problem I have. So, the mountains were this healthy kind of way to, I guess in the same way music was, like a healthy way to express myself and to feel untethered of the social norms, and success was self-directed and self-imposed, and failure was binary. You either make it to the summit or you don't. You ski the line or you don't. I think one thing I'd lacked in life is this, consequence and action consequence kind of intersection. And all of a sudden, when you're out there skiing or climbing, you make it to the top or you don't, And don't doesn't mean you die. It just means, something happened and you had to come back down. And so there was something, I think, really enticing about that, about success and failure being defined by myself, and they just are what they are. They're mathematical in that way. And skiing was this whole other thing of just the freedom, flying, and to be out in the mountains in the backcountry skiing. After I graduated high school, I went to Fort Lewis College for a hot minute. And I don't think I went to a single class, because there was this group of climbers and skiers, and every day there was a much better option than class. And it was to go and push ourselves and try stuff. And thank God I survived those days in the San Juans, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Was it just like totally reckless kind of stuff back then, where you look back on it and you're like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm here?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea what I was going into. Those mountains are renowned for instability and sketchy avalanche conditions, high hazard all the time. And I was going out there with no understanding of that. Just like dip, 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 dip with my friends and going skiing something. And, I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm just so happy I survived it. And, that was kind of pervasive through my early climbing and skiing. It's just, I got into some situations over the years as a youth, just kind of doing stupid stuff because I didn't know any better. And, that's the best way to learn, but it's also the worst way to survive.
And when you think about the worst situation that you put yourself in back then, what would that be?
Oh, man, I think about this one time climbing Forbidden Peak, which is one of the West Ridge of Forbidden Peak, one of the 50 classic climbs in North America. And the way we climbed it was just bonkers. It was just me and a buddy, and we were running the whole rope out. And this is real climber nerd stuff, but, just kind of doing it all the worst way possible. And then on the way down, I remember we got ourselves off route. And so we're on this tabletop pedestal, dead flat, and we're trying to build this anchor in this completely horizontal platform that's then gonna be this free hanging rappel down off of the mountain. And it was the sketchiest thing. I remember he went first, and so I was standing on the pieces of protection so that they wouldn't pop out when he was rappelling. But then I have to go and rappel, and there's no one to stand on those things for me. I'm just like, why didn't we just go back up and go down the right way? That's what ultimately comes to mind. But yeah, it's years and years of doing stupid stuff like that, whether it's backcountry skiing in high avalanche conditions or kicking off giant avalanches that I had no idea would be there because I had no point of reference, climbing into a storm, on volcanoes. It's just, did all the stupid stuff. But those are also the stories I tell, like people always want to hear stories of heroics when it comes to climbing and skiing and spending time in the mountains, but I find the best stories are the most self-deprecating ones, the ones where you're like, oh my God, we screwed up so big, and here we are dealing with it. They're just far more compelling.
They are far more compelling. You didn't have the most compelling one to tell when I asked you for it, but that's all right. So we're going to go with, at this point, you get through your semester of going through no classes at Fort Leisure, and then you work your way back up to the North Cascades, I think. And do you start working with the North Cascade mountain guides first? Is that like your first kind of job out of school?
No, I worked for pro guiding a little bit. I worked for the Northwest Mountain School. It was just kind of back then there really wasn't anything in the way of ski guiding. I mean, it was very specialized and didn't really happen. So it was really tough to make it happen full time. So there was always other jobs happening. And that was where I worked at Dave Page in Seattle. And that was kind of what really brought home the bacon. And it wasn't a lot of bacon, I'll tell you that much. Lean ass pig. Then I got married in 2009 and we were living in Seattle. And there was just this one day where I was like, I can't do it anymore. I can't live here anymore. It was too rainy. I always kind of held myself in high esteem for being a Seattle local who could handle the rain. And there was this one day I was like, I can't do it. I need to move to the east side of the mountains, move to the Mesa Valley. And my wife, Abby, at the time, God bless her heart, she was like, all right. She had a good job in Seattle. And we moved out here. And then I started the boot shop out here. And while I was doing that, I started guiding for the North Cascade Mountain Guides. And they had more skiing opportunities. So all of a sudden, I could kind of make ends meet guiding just about. And then I started working for RMI a little bit on Mount Rainier. And that's really moving out here and a place where there was winter work at home really all of a sudden made it possible to make a life as a guide. And that was why I shut the shop down.
For RMI, to have that stability with them?
Yeah, that was a big part of it. They could give me a schedule for the whole summer, and I could fill it in with North Cascade Mountain Guides and stuff like that, and all of a sudden it became possible. And then I started working for North Cascade Heli in 2013, and that was when I was like, I can't do this boot thing anymore. Now I've got enough work to make it happen.
And what happened with North Cascade Mountain Guides? Because it sounded like you were with them, and maybe, I don't know if there was a falling out early on or something where you eventually didn't work for them anymore, and now you're in a roundabout way like their boss.
Yeah, how awesome is that? A baller move right there. No, there was never really a falling out. I mean, these things happen. You can hear me like searching for the diplomatic transitions here. But, ultimately, I was working at the heli a lot in the winter, so I became kind of less available for them in the winter. And then that's when I started going to the Himalayas in the spring and the fall. And so I didn't want to work for them as much in the summer. It just came to this point where I wasn't giving them really enough availability for them to keep me on the roster. And there were some growing pains in that happening, but ultimately we're all still good friends. And yeah, like you said, they'll be working for me soon, but we all have a great working relationship and, I'd say, are still very good friends. There were some turbulent moments. As I said, there was some metabolizing of the space that we needed to do.
You've done so much metabolizing in this podcast already, which is great.
Oh my God. Yeah, you should see my system is firing.
You know, you mentioned going to the Himalaya. For you, it sounds like it kind of happens early on. You're probably, what, like 27 or something like that?
No, I'm like 30 at this point.
You're like 30 at this point. But either way, for the way that you're able to kind of cut the line, I don't want to say cut the line, but a lot of people spend a ton of time, like they do Denali, they do a bunch of time in South America, and a lot of high altitude stuff. What was your resume of high altitude stuff before you went to the Himalaya? Was there a lot of it, or was it more that you were this great guy and whoever gave you this opportunity wanted you to be a part of the trip?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I had a very impressive high altitude resume. But, I mean, I guess to kind of circle back to some of our initial talking points, like on a Himalayan expedition, I'll say this, there are 1 billion people that have the ability to do that job. The question is, who do you want to spend 2 months in a tent with? And, you know, I didn't know this prior to working Himalayan expeditions, but there are a lot of people you don't want to spend 2 months in a tent with. And you got to be strong. You got to have a good work ethic. You got to be willing to kind of like do what needs to be done and keep moving. But a lot of people can do that. It really comes down to who do you want to do it with? And I think that is somewhere where I've thrived. And, you know, they're all like-minded people. So, you know, it's pretty easy to find really close friends in this world because we all love the same thing and we all are driven to a large degree by the same thing, which is, you know, in the words of Yvonne Chouinard, fun hogs. You know, like we're all looking for fun. We're all, generally speaking, these kind of ADD people motivated by a weird series of consequences and rewards. And those are the people I get along with, you know? And so it's not hard for me to like find my way into these communities and ingratiate myself because I just feel like I'm amongst my people. And so I get invited on these expeditions, and once it started, it never stopped. And I am just so grateful to be able to do it and to have said I've done it and to be able to work with the people that I've worked with. And, you know, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
How did you get that first opportunity? I mean, who came to you and was like, hey, I want to bring you to the Himalaya? And I would think you're probably doing all the grunt work in the beginning just to see how hard you'll work. And everybody sees that you're willing to work hard, if not harder than anybody else. And you've got the personality to stay and get invited back every year. But who's the person that gets you out there?
So this is kind of a full circle moment. So when I was flying back from Everest in 2019, fretting about setting fire to my life, I'm on the plane with this guy, Dave Morton, who's still one of my closest friends. Back, God, this must have been 2013. Through Eddie Bauer, I was working for Eddie Bauer. I was kind of like on their grassroots team or whatever back then. And Dave and I get paired together with this other guy, Jake Norton, who's awesome, and this photographer, Jeremiah Watt, to go into the pickets and do this climb. And we go out, and again, like Dave and I just get along royally. And he's a longtime Everest guide. And we just get along really well. And after the trip, I'm like, man, I would love to do what you do. Like, if there's ever an opportunity. And like a year later, he's like, my buddy's starting this new company and they're going to guide this first ascent in Nepal. And he's looking for another guide to help him. And I threw your name out. And so I went and met with him, and he and I got along well. And he's like, yeah, come on out. And so I go, this was 2015, the fall of 2015, and we go on this expedition, and I'm this, you know, hot shit, or feeling hot shit, like, oh yeah, going out to the Himalayas, da-da-da. And we got a group of clients, and we're going to go climb this mountain, and we're with this crew, Sherpa, that are with us, and we get up to this town called Gokyo, and my boss, this guy Garrett Madison, is the one that took me on. He's like, Sid, you're going to go ahead with the Sherpa and you're going to start climbing the route and getting it all ready. And I'm like, sounds great. I'm going to show everyone how badass I am,
Yeah.
And we go and we're hauling ropes up the mountain, and these guys are just smoking me like a Marlboro. And I'm doing my best to keep up, and day after day punishing myself. And then we bring the crew in, the clients. We move up to Camp 1, but we hadn't done any work on the route above Camp 1. So we get everyone there, and all of a sudden we're like, we're going to take a rest day here with the clients. Sid, you and the Sherpa are going to go and keep pushing the ropes up the mountain. And I remember the next morning while everyone's taking a rest, I'm just like tired as shit. And our Sirdar, who's our head Sherpa, his name's Ong Purba. He and I are still good buddies. He's like, Sid, you're out in front today. And I'm like, oh my God, really? And we're just like trail breaking through this like thigh deep snow. And I could just hear these motherfuckers behind me, the Sherpa crew. And I say that in the most endearing way, motherfuckers. I can just hear them chatting behind me, and I'm just sucking wind and can barely move. And I turn around, and I'm like, I can't do it, Purba. This is after like a couple of hours of doing this. And Purba and I have debriefed that many times over. And he's like, you need to be brought down a notch. In that moment, when you turned around and were like, I can't do it, I was like, okay, he gets it now. And he was absolutely right.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start out with Thermic Heated Socks. And when temperatures get nuclear cold, I don't hit the mountain without my Thermic socks. They are the original heated sock, and still the industry leader after 20 years. It's a total game changer. We all know that if your feet are frozen, you're not skiing or snowboarding at your best. And if you are, you're suffering through it. I make sure that never happens by always wearing my Thermic socks. Thermic's game-changing smart elastic technology heated socks are our world's first. These SET socks are a high-performance fitting, thin ski sock where the patented heating components have stretch instead of a bulky band and element. So you literally feel like you're wearing your normal favorite pair of performance ski socks. But if heat isn't for you, don't worry. Thermic has you covered with socks for winter with their athlete-tested and proven Descent line of socks. This is the #1 recommended sock by boot fitters in North America because for over a decade, Descent has engineered performance socks to eliminate things like chafing or heel blisters in your boots when you're touring or splitboarding. Descent socks have a distinct locked-on fit that never seems to change, no matter what you get up to. At the end of the day, Thermic and Descent socks are the go-to socks for the people that know. Drop into your local boot fitter and retailer and you'll see what I mean. Next up, it's Ski Idaho. And if you haven't skied in Idaho, then you're missing the best-kept ski secret in the nation. Think 19 uncrowded ski areas with epic terrain that all get a ton of snow. In Idaho, you'll ski a lot more than you're waiting in line, and they really have something for everyone. When you visit Idaho, resorts like Sun Valley, Grand Targhee, Schweitzer, Silver, and Tamarack offer that on-mountain lodging experience, and there are so many other mountains to choose from throughout the state. Between the snow, the terrain, the award-winning restaurants, and experiences like horse-drawn sleigh rides, indoor water parks, spas, skating, guided snowshoeing, and so much more, I'm not kidding when I say there really is something for everyone this winter in Idaho. And if you haven't heard about the 5th and 6th grade passport program that allows kids to ride multiple times at each resort for only $29, you need to check it out. It's worth visiting Idaho just for that. To find out more about the passport program and all things skiing in Idaho, head on over to skiidaho.us. My final sponsor this round is Stanley. And sure, you used to know Stanley for keeping your grandpa's coffee hot in that signature green water bottle. Well, they still make that iconic bottle, but Stanley is the talk of the world these days. And while they may have started with the POW movement, oh how they have grown. Nowadays, icons like Messi and Caitlin Clark and Post Malone and Olivia Rodrigo are all swearing by their Stanleys. And I've been telling you about how incredible their products are at keeping your drinks hotter and colder than anyone else for over 8 years now. I mean, Stanley invented the category in 1913, and they're constantly innovating to make sure that you have the best. And I know I love having the best. Lately, I've personally been drinking more water than ever thanks to my Stanley Quencher. And when I go to the mountain, I've integrated Stanley food storage devices into my ski routine instead of buying that $20 burger. But I have to say, my all-time favorite Stanley products are their pint glasses, which I've used every day for 8.5 years or so. Like millions of people out there, I love all my Stanley stuff, and I want you to get on the Stanley program too. They give me their best discount code available, so you get 30% off of all your products. And to do that, you head on over to stanley1913.com and you go shopping, buy a ton of stuff because you're going to get 30% off of it when you check out and use the code Powell2025. So that's all capitals, Powell, no spaces, and then the numbers 2025 2025. That's going to get you 30% off your Stanley products. Those are my sponsors. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast. Is that the only time that you've had to quit?
I mean...
From being tired, not from like being smart and having to turn around, but where I just can't go anymore? Because that's what I hear about you too, is like for all the fun and everything that you do, and like we can be at a trade show and you can drink beer all day long, have people laughing all day long. I hear you're just as much of a beast out in the mountains as well. And you're never going to break a trail and get ahead of your clients. You're always going to be talking to them and not setting a skin track so it's too ridiculous for them to do. So you're always like thinking about them, but you never stop.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as somebody who can keep going for a long time. I feel like at the very base level as a mountain guide, no matter who you're walking in front of, you need to be stronger than them. You know, there can't come a time that I'm going to stop and somebody else can keep going. That's just unacceptable in my mind. But, you know, in guiding contexts, I don't think I've ever been smoked like I was smoked in that way. That was probably the worst. There have been some other times that are pretty close, but always in a similar situation where as soon as you go out and you climb with the Sherpa, they're fucking awesome. And the thing I love about them, and this may be a bit of a deviation, but, you know, these guys love climbing the same way I do. You know, they're just as competitive. They're just as ridiculing in a good way. You know, this is when you're climbing together, everyone's trying to be the best. No one's trying to look weak. And these guys are just so much stronger that you put yourself in the right position and they will smoke you every day of the week. But it's all in good fun. It's all like because we're out there doing the thing that we love to do and want to do it as well as we can. And I bring this up because I think it's a slight misconception a lot of times in the relationship between high altitude workers and Western guides is we view each other very much as climbing partners, as compatriots, as opposed to this kind of indentured servitude narrative that gets thrown around.
Well, in terms of that narrative, though, how much does a Sherpa make per day on the mountain, you think?
Well, that's a good question. Well, not a good question. I know the answer to that. The average Sherpa, it's hard to say. So there's what we call high altitude workers, which is a better term for it in general because Sherpa's a tribe. And there are other tribes that are high altitude workers as well. So Sherpa, we call it capital S Sherpa and lowercase s. Capital S Sherpa is like the Sherpa tribe. Lowercase s Sherpa is like high altitude worker. And high altitude workers are what we call Sherpa guides, which are pretty much the same as me on the mountain, as well as porters and more kind of blue-collar Sherpa that are just moving loads up and down the mountain. Those that are in a similar position as me probably make, I would say, half what I do. And that's, you know, certainly the lead Sherpas make the same amount as I do. But, you know, these other Sherpa guides make probably half of what I do, which in and of itself is not fair. I'll give you that. But the purchasing power of what that gets them versus what my pay gets me is far skewed towards them, in the sense that just about every Sherpa guide, you know, they've got a house in their village. They have an apartment or a house in Kathmandu that their wife lives at. Their kids go to private school. You know, they do very, very well by Nepali standards. And that is really a function of market forces. I guess is the most thoughtful way I can put that.
So you're not really giving me all that I want there, but I'm going to try to get it in another way because that's how I roll with these things. So in
Let's
thinking
do
about it,
it.
how long are you in when you go to the Himalaya? How long are you gone? Is it a month-long trip?
If I'm on the north side of Everest, it's a 6-week trip. If I'm on the south side, the Nepal side of Everest, it's generally an 8-week trip, and then I'll generally do a 2 or 3 week trip of some other sort, not Everest, in the fall. So let's take the 6-week north side trip, which is what I do these days.
Actually, before we even start, difference between the north and south sides. Where do we see the lines of like hundreds of people waiting to get up like the Hillary step or whatever that is?
We see those on the south side. That's, to put that in perspective, Nepal issues somewhere between 400, 450 foreign permits a year to climb the mountain. Tibet, China, issues about 40. So it's very, very quiet on the north side. And so that's out of Tibet. We fly to mainland China, and then from there we fly to Lhasa, and then drive across the Tibetan Plateau to Everest Base Camp, and then start our expedition from there.
And you're 6 weeks gone from start to finish. And I mean, in those 6 weeks, are you making like 15 grand while you're gone?
Closer to 30 is what I make.
Okay, so the Sherpas are making 15. We found it out. That's not that hard.
Whoa. I hope so.
And I don't know if it's the capital C Sherpas or the small Sherpas or the Sherpa guides or the Nepalese family tribe Sherpas. I'm not sure which Sherpas are making 15 grand, but it sounds like somebody's making 15 grand and you're making 30 grand. That's a good chunk of change, man. If you could do a bunch of those trips a year, you wouldn't have to go heli skiing for anything but fun.
No, that would be great. But I like being in charge heli skiing, so it would be very tough for me to go heli skiing in any other way other than being in charge.
That's something else that we should talk about. So we haven't talked much about heli skiing. We're going to talk about it. You started working for North Cascade Heli Skiing. We'll get back to Everest maybe in a little bit. Who knows? But you're starting to work for heli skiing, and you have to work your way up. And are you heli skiing 5 days a week?
Yeah, during the season, it probably averages out to, I wouldn't say heli skiing. I'm offering one of our products, which is either going out to the yurt, which we do for 3 or 4 night trips, which you heli into and ski tour. It's absolutely magical. Either I'm doing those, heli touring, which you're just bumped out for the day and then you ski tour and then come back, or standard heli skiing. I'm probably doing that 5 days a week, 3 to 6 days a week over the course of the season, I'd say.
And being that you're no spring chicken these days, I mean, you've been doing it for a long time, but you're getting older. Does it take a toll on your body?
Thanks, Mike.
Well, what are you, 42?
42. Yeah, I am 42.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Which brings up a funny point. I was always the young guy in all of these things. And no matter, even in like the Himalayan stuff, I always felt like the young guy. And then all of a sudden, one day, you're not. You're the old guy. So now I look around and I'm like, holy shit, I'm no spring chicken. And for example, I think it was like 2 years ago, every day when we're heli skiing, you have to lift the basket and lift the lid up and put all the skis and packs in there and then close it. And I was just putting skis into the basket, and all of a sudden something went out in my shoulder where I was like, it really hurt. And I couldn't do anything with that arm the rest of the day. And I was like, what kind of injury is that? A heli ski injury? Like, it's, so now I have to take care of my temple, I guess,
Yeah.
which I'm trying to figure out.
That happens. And being that you're the young guy in every situation, in the Himalaya, in the Heli Bay, everywhere that you're going, you're the young kid when it starts out. And you're in a place with tons of huge personalities, a lot of egos, and everybody thinks their opinion is right. Is it intimidating for you going into these different circles and giving your opinion? Or do you shut up, or you listen, or how do you operate?
You read the situation. I think it's very important to know where you are in the room. No matter which room that is, are you the smartest guy? Are you the dumbest guy? Do you have the most to learn? And just acknowledging where that spot is And that can change. Like, I think about our morning and our afternoon meetings here in the heli. Knowing where I am is going to dictate how I operate. If a lot of days I'll sit there and listen because we got some really smart people here, and it's better for me just to sit and listen and maybe throw a comment out or a question here and there. There are other days where I have to kind of run the thing, and it's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. It's just that is my role of that day. And I think being in tune to that, same with on Everest, like a lot of times I'm the loudest guy in the room. Other times I try to be the guy that listens. And, to whatever degree of success I find in trying to do that, that's up to other people to decide. But I think having an understanding of where you are in the room is a very valuable thing in industries with large egos, which this certainly has. We all think we're the smartest, or we all want to be the smartest. I'll say that.
Well, I can say that hanging out around you, I had no feeling that you had an ego at all. I didn't know your resume beyond you and I just shooting the shit talking, and I figured you heli skied every day, so you're a sick skier, but I didn't really know all the details of it. But in doing the research, it's like you're this badass athlete in what you're doing. And
oh, dude, I love it. I love it. I'll take it all day.
Well, with all of this and ego, you didn't seem to have any ego. And when you're in the mountains, is it one of those things where you want to have first descents and you need that kind of stuff to make you feel good about yourself? Because you didn't seem like one of those dudes who needed to tick those boxes. It was more that you just wanted to be out there doing stuff. But I don't know you well enough to know if you have that ego.
I mean, I would say I do. I do. I want it more than I have it. Like, I know that there are a lot of people out there doing much cooler stuff than me. I love what I do, and it works incredibly well with my life. And I'm, in all honesty, very proud of all the things that I've done. But there are people out there doing such cool stuff. I'm happy with where I am, but I don't have any misconceptions about the fact that there are other people doing way cooler stuff. And I'm so for that. And there are people that, are smarter than me and better than me. And I love it. I love being around those people. I love having those people around me. I do think I'm pretty awesome, though.
Well, does it ever feel like your job is to get someone up the mountain, too? Like, are there times where someone gets to the mountain, they're not in great shape, and it's like up to you to almost will them up the mountain?
Yes. And, I feel, an ethical and a moral responsibility to minimize that. But it does happen where you're like, these days, I only guide private clients. So it's just me and one other person. But, over the years, I've also guided, larger groups in a group guiding situation. And that's when, on these big mountains where all of a sudden it's like, what is my obligation here? As a guide, if someone's not ready, step one of guiding is saying, sorry, you shouldn't be here. As opposed to, a lot of companies in high dollar guiding situations kind of take the let them weed themselves out attitude, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. It's our duty as guides to say, you can't do this, so therefore you shouldn't be here. But, when you're dealing with those sums of money, there's lawsuits that come from telling somebody they have to go home. And which is a big part of the reason that I've started only doing private clients, because I have control over my person. And they've entrusted me to make those decisions for them. And in guiding them one-on-one, they're going to listen to me in a lot of situations more so than they would in a group situation, because they know that my responsibility is to them. I'm not telling them they can't do it because maybe somebody else can and I just need to get rid of the dead weight. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. But then at the same time, when you see the dead weight out there and you see other groups and they're struggling and you're with your one client, I would think it kind of creates a moral dilemma when you see somebody who's struggling or needs help and your client expects you to get them to the top. It's like, do you help the struggling group where 300 and some odd people have died on that mountain, so you never know what's going to happen? Or do you get your client to the top? Does that ever create that decision that you have to make?
Well, I make it very clear that if the difference between life and death for another person is the cost of our summit, we won't do it. We will opt to, or I will opt to help this person down. And that's just, if you want to climb Mount Everest with me, that's just kind of going to be the way it is. And it's never come down to that. It's come close. In 2018, I had this guy that died, or I didn't have this guy died, and a good buddy of mine sacrificed his summit to drag this guy down. This was on the south side, on the Nepal side. He was dragging this guy down both his buddies were dead, and this guy barely was alive. And my buddy Brent Bishop, sacrificed everything, said, we're taking this guy down, dragged him down, got him down to the South Call, and Brent was all fucked up from this. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you can say whatever you would like.
Yeah. All right. Fuck.
Yeah.
Shit. Nice. So Brent gets him down, and Brent's all fucked up, and because of his exertion at that altitude, and then I take over and hung out with that dude while he died. Where was I going with that again?
I don't know, but it's just the moral dilemma of trying to help somebody.
Yes.
And I had read a different story online about something where you were heli skiing once, and some guys called in and they were like, hey, we've got a guy with a broken leg. And you're like, I'm nearby with a helicopter. I'm going to come down. You left your group. You skied out with the rest of the group, and they took the guy with the broken leg because that's who you are. It's like, hey, I'm going to help at all costs.
This was early on in my heli ski days, and it was last run of the last day of the season, shutting her down. And we were skiing up on the Silver Star Glacier, which is kind of our home zone here at North Cascade Heli. It's awesome skiing. And the whole day we were watching these people skinning up. And we're trying to give them space, trying not to crimp their style. So we kind of move away. Last run of the day, we ski the Silver Star Glacier all the way to the bottom. Earlier in the day, we'd seen them ski off the top, and all of a sudden, they're just doing these big, long, back and forth, kick turns down the mountain. We're like, what kind of skier climbers do we have over here? And we watch them, and we move on, go somewhere else. And at the end of the day, we come and ski that run. And I'm at the very bottom in the dog hair. We have it's a really nice landing, but this, comes down into the forest, and I'm standing there waiting for the helicopter to come pick my group up and take us back to Mazama. And all of a sudden, out of the woods, this group comes pushing out, and the guy's like, "Are you with the heli ski group?" And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I broke my leg. And it's this 73-year-old guy named Chester Marlar, who first turn off the top of Silver Star, broke his leg. And this savage dude skis the 4,500 vertical feet and doesn't ask for help until he gets to the bottom. And he's like, can you help me? I was like, I can absolutely help you. Oh my God, dude, this old man with a broken leg just skied through the trees. And oh my God, I was so impressed. So right then the helicopter's coming in, and I was like, I'm going to put this old guy in my seat, and I'm going to ski out with his crew. And so we do that. I put him in the front seat, and they fly out, and then I ski out with his crew, and they had cars at the bottom, and they drove us back. And I didn't know it at the time, but it turned out he was a bit of a guy. He was a name in the old school, Washington State, annals of ski history.
Huh.
Yeah. But I was really happy to be able to help him. And, I was happy to get another 1,500 feet of vertical.
I'm going to take it back to Everest. How many minutes have you spent on top at the summit?
Oh man, total?
Yeah.
I've been up there 4 times, and I would say average 20 minutes
Okay.
per time. Although 2024, it was really quite pleasant. And Emily, my girlfriend, my partner, she's our manager, base camp manager. So she's on the radio with me while I'm up there. I get up there and she's like, "You got 10 minutes up there." And I stayed up there for like 40 minutes. And she was like, all of a sudden getting all mad at me on the radio. And then I was like, "It's fine. I'm good. It's really nice up here."
Well, we've all seen the movies, and in the movies, things can happen really quick on that mountain. And have there been storms that have moved in that you're like, holy shit, this happened way faster than I thought and we need to retreat?
Yeah, 2021 on the south side, we'd kind of eyed up this window and it looked all good. And we went for it. We get to Camp 3, and all of a sudden, like, the storm comes in and dumps like a meter of snow, like 3.5 feet overnight. And Camp 3 is a really unfortunate place to spend. You generally just crash out there and then keep moving because it's in the middle of the Lhotse face and it's kind of terrible. And we ended up having to spend 2 more nights there just like waiting for weather to break to go up to Camp 4 and then to the summit and back to Camp 2. And we barely eked it out. But yeah, the wind was blowing so hard and it was snowing so hard while we're at Camp 3 that I'm having to get out like 2-3 times a night because the wind slabs pushing down on these tents were like squishing them down to where there's only like 24 inches of cavity from the top of the tent to where you're laying in bed. It was just blowing the snow and packing it in, and I'd have to go out and shovel all the tents out, and they pop back up. And yeah, it was part of the job.
Is that the worst you've suffered in the mountains?
Oh man, good question. I've suffered, I mean, there's emotional suffering, there's physical suffering, then there's this like ambiguous kind of I don't know what's going to happen suffering. I would say no, it's like I don't and again kind of none of it I see as suffering once it's over and it's okay. Then you're just like, it's all right. There have been some hopeless moments.
Yeah, I would think when you're in 90-mile-an-hour winds in a tent that's got 24 inches of clearance, and it's not like you, I would think, could read or anything because the wind's whipping and it's just like so loud and everything's going on. It's just like you're just sitting there shivering, like waiting for it to end.
Yeah, and you're sitting in that situation, I was with this other guy named Teray, and we're just sitting in the tent, just like kind of looking at each other, and yeah, you're just kind of like, fuck, man, I hope this doesn't get any worse, because if it gets any worse, we're in big trouble. And then you think about like, okay, do we need to have everyone put their boots on just in case all of a sudden the tent's shred? Like, does everyone need to like lay in their beds, kit it out, in case everyone needs to make some sort of move? And it's those kind of decisions where you really don't know if you made the right one until you make the wrong one. You could make the wrong one 100 times and it'll be okay. But, that's where kind of the art of mountain guiding is you can get away with a lot of stuff unintentionally, I'll say. Things just work out in your favor. But if something had gone slightly worse and you hadn't made that call earlier, then all of a sudden you're in a heap of trouble. So it's this constant calculus of like, how much of a pain in the ass do I create this situation right now in the event that it goes the wrong way? If it goes the right way, we're all good. But am I just guessing on which way it's going to go? And this is true for high altitude guiding, for rock climbing guiding, for alpine guiding, for ski guiding. It's all the same. Like, how much precaution do I need to put out there right now, which is going to be a pain in the ass for everyone involved, versus let's just see how this turns out.
Yeah, I would think let's just see how it turns out is something that you like to do more on your own trips, and then the precaution is when you're guiding after other people.
Exactly. You're building in a bigger buffer and you're like, I'm sorry to do this to you guys right now, but this is what we need to do. And then nothing actually comes of it. And you're like, but if something had, we were ready for it. That's the gold standard, is that you're prepared.
All right, well, I'm going to prepare you for something called Inappropriate Questions in a minute, but I have a couple questions before I get to that because we didn't really stick to my notes or go on to my timeline that I had because you know what? You're just interesting to talk to and it's kind of nice to just throw shit at you and let you run with it, and we did that. But one thing I have to ask you about is that you're about to be the owner of a heli ski company, and another thing that happens to you, because I'm going to guess a lot of personality is involved, but you've known these guys for 20 some odd years as well, but at 43 years old, you're buying into North Cascade Heli Ski and you're going to be an owner there. When does that happen and how does that happen?
It happens January 31st is the handover of the keys, the handshake and the hug. Yeah, how does it happen? Again, yeah, the owners and I have become fast friends, We like each other. We all see the things the same way. And Paul Butler, who is one of the owners currently that I'm taking over for, he's created this amazing thing. And, I am making an assumption here, but, he wants to see it carried on in the same theme that it has been. It's this great thing that struck a balance between professionalism and radness, and the greatest kept secret in the lower 48, if not the United States. I want to keep doing what we're doing here. And I think he saw that. I hope he saw that. We also play in a band together. The Metah Valley's premier sonic experience. We're called the Loose Notes. And so we're just really good friends and, we're very much alike. We see the world the same way. And he's got kids that are, grown and flown the coop, and he wants to not be tied down every November through March. And I'm ready to, take the reins. And I like to think that he saw that and was like, this is the best fit going forward. And so I've had to, this is going to bum all the Mercer Islanders out there, but I've had to, go scrap money together to make this happen. And yeah, a lot of people have come through to make it happen for me. And I am eternally grateful for, and we'll be here. As we like to say, we're not sure where you'll be, but we'll be skiing powder.
That is just the greatest line, and it's going to lead us right into the greatest part of this show, and that is Inappropriate Questions. Yeah, this is where I get someone that to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. We were talking about a former owner, or on January 31st, he's going to be a former owner, Paul Butler, and I was able to get this legend in heli skiing, especially in Washington, to ask the inappropriate questions. And Paul came up with 3 questions. Yep, he did. And Paul really did understand this assignment. I don't know him well, but he is awesome. In the couple minutes that we talked and the questions that he came up with, I realized that he is an amazing guy just like yourself. You are not going to like all of these questions that are coming up, but I am going to play them for you right now. Here is question number 1 from Paul.
All right.
Yep, here we go. This one is about tattoos. And it's an interesting story, I think, to some degree, but why a cupcake? And why on your thigh?
All right, he starts out with an easy one, I would think.
This is a story that I do love to tell. While my daughters will continuously ask me why at 38 years old did you get your one and only tattoo, which is a cupcake on your thigh? And it's a good question and an honest question, and one that seemingly does not have a good answer, but I do think it has a good answer. I'd gotten divorced, or I was going through the split with my wife at the time, and it was a tough time. And this great buddy of mine, Matt Bain, called me up. He knew I was bumming, And he was like, I was actually hanging out on Vashon Island at the time, kind of convalescing with some of my deep roots homies that live on Vashon. And he calls me up and he goes, tomorrow be on the Portland train at King Street Station in Seattle at 11. And I'm like, okay. And I show up there and there's like, he lives in Bellingham or lived in Bellingham at the time, and a bunch of friends kind of in the Seattle, Bellingham zone. They're all on the train, and we take the train down to Portland, and it's nothing but just kind of like a cradling a man that's having a tough time, you know? Like my friends showed up, and we just had a night, which, Mike, you're familiar with, you know? And the next night, everybody left, and it was just Matt and I. And we're like, we need to make this night more interesting. It was just going to be two of us hanging out here. So we created this game that was like 21 random challenges. You just had to ask a stranger to pick a number between 21, and the other person had 1 hour to accomplish that task. You know, and they were all over the map. Some were easy, some were difficult, but one was get a tattoo of the other person's choosing, and you could choose where it was on your body. And it was probably like midnight. I lost this one. All of a sudden, I had 1 hour to find a tattoo place. And turns out there was one like open right around the corner because, you know, fucking Portland. And we go, and I'm 3 sheets to the wind, and we go in there, and the guy's like, you know, I'm all booked up. I'll let you know if anything opens up. And we decided, Matt and I, like, that was good enough. You know, I did the best I could in an hour.
Yeah.
And so we moved on with the game. At like 2:30 in the morning, this tattoo artist texts Matt and is like, I got time right now. And now we're even more 3 sheets. We're like many sheets to the wind. And we go in there, and I remember we had construction worker hats on for some reason. And I had to get this tattoo, and the only place I could think to do it was right by my junk, right on my thigh, just because, you know,
no one's gonna see it.
No one's gonna see it. Yeah. And I get the tattoo. The next morning we get on the train, we cruise back to Seattle, and while it's a stupid tattoo, what it always reminds me of is like a friend stepping up, coming in to like help you when you're having a tough time. And I have nothing but like loving memories of that tattoo, and we'll see if that maintains throughout life. But it's my favorite tattoo story.
Well, that sounds like a fun game. Another fun game that I played with you, which is fun just to say I played a game with you, but the game that we played, it was not hide the finger. It was called Ruin Your Uber Rating.
Uber score. Yeah. Ruin somebody else's Uber score.
So you would get the Ubers, because I would just give you cash and stuff because I didn't want to play the game on my own. And then we would just get into the Uber and be like, hey, can we smoke weed in here? Can we do this in here? Can we do that in there?
Yeah.
And you were nice enough where your score didn't get raised at all. But that is that. We've talked about how nice and cool you are enough, so we're not going to just say any more of that stuff. What we are going to do is we're going to play your next inappropriate question. I am queuing it up again right here, so let's go do this, and here we go.
All right.
What was more embarrassing for you, Sid? Shitting yourself in your down suit on Amla de Blanc a few years ago? Or the fact that your daughter pointed that out in front of her classmates at a presentation you made to them at her school?
That's a good one, actually, right there. That was kind of a twofer. Which part was more embarrassing? Well, I'll start with saying this: like, you do enough Himalayan guiding, shitting your pants just becomes kind of commonplace. Well, I won't say commonplace, but, you know, a tellable story as opposed to a story you're trying to bury. And I thought it was hilarious. You know, I got sick. I got ruthlessly sick on this mountain called Amla de Blanc on our summit day. And throwing up all over the place and pooping myself. And I come home from that expedition, and you want to tell your daughters something relatable. So I tell them the story about me shitting my down suit, which for those who don't know, it's a one-piece down suit that you wear. It's very warm. So when you poop in it, it really finds its way into some spots. And so I'd done this, and then on the way down, I had to strip the thing off, and then I dropped my camera case into the poop, and it was ugly. It was not okay. But so then I come home from the expedition, and I tell the girls about this, and it's like a month later, I'm going to do a talk at my daughter's,
take your dad to school day type thing, career day.
Yeah. It was, her preschool. A bunch of little boogery kids. And so I bring my down suit in and my boots and my crampons, and I bring all my stuff, and I have my down suit laid out there, and all the kids are like crawling around in it because it's super warm. And my daughter Marley, she's like, my dad pooped in that. All of a sudden I see like every teacher's eyes like fire on me. I'm like, no, but I kind of washed it. I didn't really wash. I mean, I chipped it out.
Right.
I watched it. But so I would say the getting called out in front of your daughter's classmates is far more embarrassing than the actual pooping of your down suit.
All right. Well, you've got one final inappropriate question. I think you saved the best for last, and it kind of maybe tells who Sid is and the opportunities that Sid creates by being Sid. And here is your final inappropriate question.
Oh, good.
Well, this one's going to go into your vast, experiences you have. And I think it might be interesting for Mike's younger viewers, but what advice would you give a teenager who may be considering or is actually in an affair with their teacher?
So Hot for Teacher, the song by Van Halen, actually came true for you, or she was hot for the student. What happened here?
I mean, it's just your standard coming of age story, not unlike that of Stand By Me or, The Sandlot, except, I was lucky enough to, my high school education incorporated a lot of stuff. And so, how much of the story do I tell?
It's up to you.
Yeah, so it was, let's see, I was a very good soccer player. I mean, not like actually good, but I was very studious about it. And I was a fast runner. And so I got recruited to the track team. The track coach happened to be this fairly beautiful teacher who was a calculus teacher, math teacher. And by way of an unfortunate breakup, you called me a popular kid. I think it was a sophomore that I was dating at the time, and I was a senior, and she broke up with me. And so I was a sad sack again. And this teacher did not like seeing that. And so we developed, feelings, and then, finished school, and we just decided to take off across the desert Southwest for an awesome summer of
pole vaulting.
Trying to be very diplomatic about this. And then, it was awesome. She taught me a lot. I learned a lot about myself and what being an adult was all about, and how ill-prepared I actually was for that task. But so it became a thing. I don't know how much more I want to say on that publicly.
I think you've nailed it there, literally and figuratively. I think you got that one done. And I think that's kind of where we close this podcast out, because that's Inappropriate Questions. You were able to tell a ton of stories. Well, I didn't get through, like I said, the chronology of your life. I really didn't. I really had you on the podcast not to tell the details of every single year of your life and what happened to you in the mountains. It's because you're one of those guys that's so fun to talk to, and you have so many great stories, and you're so good at telling them that I had to bring you on the podcast to tell all these. At first I was like, oh, we'll do a podcast and we'll have Emily do half of it and we'll have you do half of it. And then I was like, what the fuck, man? We're just gonna have you do your own podcast because you're that interesting and you're that badass in the mountains too. So I want to thank you for making the time for me. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you, Mike. Love the PAL movement. I love hanging out and chatting with you, and let's do it again.
So that was time with Sid Pattison, and what a dude. I spent 6 days with Sid at a trade show, and I had a man crush after day one. I'm guessing everyone is like that with Sid. He's that personable, that cool, and that funny. And I only know him from drinking beer at a trade show. I bet he's even better in the mountains, and when you really need someone that you can count on, someone that you need to be inspired by, I bet Sid is that guy too. I didn't need that at the trade show we were at, but he was definitely the guy that I looked to when I wanted to be entertained or I wanted to just have a fun conversation, because that is what Sid is all about, and I'm sure he's about a lot more. We uncovered a few layers. If you want to get to know Sid more, you can learn all about him by booking a trip to North Cascade Heli Skiing. That's the podcast. At this point, I want to wish you a very happy new year and a much better 2026. And I want you to help me out by listening to my sponsor ads and buying their products. The brands that make this show happen are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Best Day Brewing, Stanley, Thermic Heated Socks, and Ski Idaho. Have a great week, everyone.